All right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Welcome back. We had a cancellation last week, alhamdulillah, but I think it was well worth it. We had a lot of good renovations at the masjid. All the best to brothers and everybody who participated and donated. So, a quick recap. Who did we cover last week? We started with Ali radiallahu anhu. And we got to a certain stage of his life, and then we put a pause on it because the next section of his life was with none other than Fatima radiallahu anha, the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu. Inshallah, we're picking up from there. So today we're going to focus on Fatima radiallahu anha and her biography before we continue with the remaining portion of Ali radiallahu anhu's life because they were together. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح صدري ويسر لي امري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اما بعد. Allah, battery's a bit low, but I think we should be okay, inshallah. Okay, so Fatima. What does the word Fatima mean? So we spoke about her mother. We said Khadija. Now, if you guys remember what Khadija means, Fatima is the exact opposite of that meaning. You guys remember what Khadija means? So I give you a hint. We said when she was born and she was named Khadija, there was nobody else with that name. It was very, very unique to name somebody Khadija. So Khadija means premature. And it could have been that she was born premature. Now Fatima, on the other hand, means full term, weaned on proper time. Typically, the scholars of the Arabic language indicate that perhaps it was meant for indicating that a baby, boy or girl, is born healthy, very healthy, weaned at the proper time, properly fed, and full term, the opposite of premature. Now, she also did have a few nicknames, a few names that she was given. So one of them is Al-Habibatu bint Al-Habib. Al-Habibatu bint Al-Habib. This is the beloved one, the daughter of the beloved one. Okay? She's also very well known as Fatima al-Zahra. Fatima al-Zahra, which means the radiant face, full of nur, just like her father. Muhammad's face had full nur. She also has another nickname called Al-Batur. Al-Batur is the one who turned back to Allah Azza wa Jalla, indicating, pointing to her worship and ibadah, really turning back to Allah Azza wa Jalla. She has been documented to have been born in the same year that the prophethood started, meaning the revelation of the Quran. So that puts her at a time where, when we read in the seerah and the biography of Khadija radiallahu anha, when she was going back and forth and she was going up and down the mountain to the cave of Hira to provide Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam with provisions, clothing, food, she would have been pregnant actually at that time with Fatima radiallahu anha. Now, in regards to where she's at, the number of kids, the children of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam started off with Qasim, first one, which was a boy, and that's why one of the kunyas of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was Abul Qasim. And he obviously, like all his other baby boys, died at a very young age. He's noted to have lived up until the age of 3, and he passed away. After that, we have Zainab radiallahu anha, and then Ruqayya, and then Kulthum, and then the fourth is Fatima radiallahu anha, and then Abdullah after her, and then Ibrahim, which was the only son Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had that was not from Khadija radiallahu anha in Medina, who also passed away at a very young age. So, out of the children of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam from Khadija radiallahu anha, Fatima radiallahu anha is the only one that was actually born within the Islamic period. So Islam was already in the house and she was born. What that also means is that she never got to live the life of luxury. As we discussed, after the Prophethood came, the sacrifices and spending towards the da'wah and the mission of Islam all the wealth that Khadija radiallahu anha had and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had established, it all was spent. It was all spent towards establishing the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. So from the very beginning of her life, she was seeing constant poverty, and one of the main things, aside from the death of her siblings and eventually her mother, what she also witnessed a lot was the persecution of her own father. Okay, this is a very, very recurrent theme. She has also been known, narrated by Khadija, by Aisha radiallahu anha, that she was basically an exact female version of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The way she would speak, the way she walked, even she says the way she would sit down and get up. To that detail, she would behave just like her father, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's how much she was. The way she walked, even the way she would take her steps, was exactly like her father. And she went through the same hardship and sadness when her mother passed away, Khadija radiallahu anha, and also almost like a grandfather figure when Abu Talib passed away. So she witnessed that. However, one thing that God passed on to her, and she actually picked up another nickname. At the age of 10, she became to be known as Abiha, the mother of her dad, the mother of her father. And the reason for that is the responsibilities of the household and taking care of Rasulullah fell on her at the age of 10. So when Rasulullah would come home and he'd be persecuted, and there's narrations, the minimum that's written is that he was physically assaulted at least 8 times before he migrated to Medina. So aside from that, many times when people throw filth at him, or they would put filth and stuff in front of the entrance of the home, and he would have to clean that up. And then sometimes he would come home beaten, bloodied, bruised. All those times, Fatima radiallahu anha would come to him, and she's only about 8, 9, 10 years old at this time, and she's heartbroken, sad, crying, washing his hands, pouring water over him, wiping him with cloth, and just very sad. And so every time Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would tell her and reassure her that not to cry, not to be sad or heartbroken, that indeed Allah Azza wa Jal is going to grant him victory, is going to grant Islam victory. And this title stayed with her, subhanAllah, even until after she was an adult, after her marriage, subhanAllah, that stayed with her. And we're going to come back to that, inshallah, come Medinan phase. So Rasulullah would say, my daughter, how are you? When he would ask her at home, how are you? Her answer would be, subhanAllah, this is again, age 9, 10-ish. She would say, I'm in pain. This is a young girl. This is a young girl, subhanAllah. So she would say, I'm in pain. And then she says, what pains me even more, what hurts me even more, is that we don't have food to eat. SubhanAllah. It's bad enough that, she's looking at her father beaten up and bruised and hurt, and she's doing the cleanup and bandaging him up. But at the same time, this young girl at the age of 9, 10 years old is saying, not only am I in pain, but we also have no food. And this is when Muhammad ﷺ reassures her and just really, really feels hurt. So what he tells her, oh my daughter, how would you feel if I was to tell you that you are the leader, the Sayyida, he says the Sayyida of all women, the leader or the master of all women. And subhanAllah, so she remembers the lessons from before, so she immediately asks, well, what about Maryam alayhi salam? Because I thought she was the Sayyida of the Nisa, the leader of women. So then Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam clarifies there's a total of 4 women that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam clarifies that perfected their iman. So we have Maryam alayhi salam, Asiya, the wife of Fir'aun who raised Musa alayhi salam, Khadija radiallahu anha, and of course Fatima radiallahu anha herself. So he clarifies that those were the best of women and the leaders of their time. Now, one incident that really highlights how much Muhammad ﷺ loved Fatima radiallahu anha is a very famous incident. But the reason we miss this part is because usually we put ourselves in the shoes of Rasulullah ﷺ to see exactly what he's going through, and we kind of miss what the other Sahaba and family members are feeling when this is happening. So this incident is when Muhammad ﷺ is praying by the Kaaba, and you have Abu Jahl and his cronies, his posse basically, and he challenges them. He says to anybody, I challenge anybody who is man enough to go outside the city and grab the innards of the animal. So what they would do at the time, when they would slaughter big animals like a camel, for example, so all the waste from the innards, the bone, whatever they would not use, let's say the feet, the skin, whatever they would have as waste, they would throw it for disposal just outside the city. And there was an area for that. So Abu Jahl challenged anybody who was sitting there, his buddies, that who would go and grab a bunch of that and bring it and throw it on top of Muhammad ﷺ as he's praying in front of the Kaaba. So Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayt is the one that stands up and he says, I'll fulfill this challenge. He accepts it, he volunteers, he gets up, and he's a big man. He's very strong, he's big. So he goes to outside the city, grabs a whole bunch of this filth, the innards of the camel, and he brings it with him, and he waits until Muhammad ﷺ goes into sajda, and he just throws it on him. Now, the amount of stuff that he threw on him was so much and heavy that it pinned Muhammad ﷺ in the position of the sajda that he could not get up. That's how heavy it was. Now, we have a Sahabi, of course, that witnesses this, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. The issue is that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud was from a very low class of society at the time. He did not have any tribe backing or a big family to help him out. If he had interfered, they would have definitely killed him on the spot, and that wouldn't have made anything better. So what he does, he immediately runs to the house of Rasulullah, hoping to find anybody to come and help and get the stuff off of Muhammad. The only person he finds is none other than the 10-year-old Fatima radiallahu anha. So he tells her what's going on, and she immediately starts running towards the haram, towards the Kaaba. Now imagine a 10-year-old girl, subhanAllah, if we have 10-year-old daughters, or we know we've seen 10-year-old girls. I have a 10-year-old daughter at home, subhanAllah, named Asiya, one of the 4 women mentioned earlier. SubhanAllah, imagining a 10-year-old girl, and she's just running towards the Kaaba, crying and screaming his name from the top of her lungs, saying, my father, Abati, Abati, until she finally arrives in front of the Kaaba, and she sees this scene of mockery and pointing at Muhammad ﷺ and being laughed at. And she's crying and she's rushing over to him, and she's grabbing, imagine now, little small hands that she has. She's trying to grab anything that she can off the top and try to pull it off of Muhammad ﷺ so that he can get up. So eventually, after many struggles and tries, both of them to working together, eventually they're able to unpin Muhammad ﷺ from under all that animal innards and filth. And Muhammad ﷺ finally gets up. Now, Muhammad ﷺ had been persecuted and physically assaulted many times before, especially in Ta'if. When he went to Ta'if, Muhammad ﷺ even narrates that that was one of the toughest days of my life. Because not only there was a rejection of the elite from the city of Ta'if, and then as he was leaving the city, he was being stoned basically. All the pelts and rocks were being thrown at him on purpose, aiming at his feet to make him bleed, make him, as he's walking, bleed more and hurt more until he finally left the city. At that opportunity, the angels came down, Jibreel alayhi salam came down with the angel of the mountains, and Jibreel alayhi salam said to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if you want, You have full permission, you have full control. Just say the word to the angel of mountain here, and he's just going to basically destroy the entire city of Taif. He's going to grab the two mountains, because it was in a valley. The city was in a valley in between two mountains. The angel was going to push the two mountains and completely destroy the city altogether. And Muhammad said, no, I'm not going to do that. Actually, he made dua for them that their children, their offsprings, one day would accept Islam. Is exactly what happened. And many other times, individually, Abu Jahl assaulted him verbally many times, and the many other times that he was physically assaulted, he never made dua against anybody. But in this scenario, that was not the case. As soon as he got up, and if it was just by himself, he most likely would not have made the dua against him also. What he saw was the pain of his daughter. What he saw is how badly she was hurt, frustrated, and crying. So out of that love that he had for Fatima radiallahu anha, and he couldn't take that pain. It's one thing that you suffer pain on your own. When you see your children in suffering like that, he couldn't take it. So that's when he makes the dua against them by name individually. All of them, he makes dua against each and every one of them. And subhanAllah, each and every single one of them ended up dying at the very first battle that they had against the Muslims in the Battle of Badr. Every single one of them died. So we see in this instance, in this moment, that how much Muhammad loves his daughter Fatima radiallahu anha. And also keep in mind that the sons died at a very young age. The other daughters also passed away. The two daughters that were married to Uthman radiallahu anhu passed away. Kulthum, Ruqayya passed away. Zainab radiallahu anhu also passes away in Medina. So Fatima radiallahu anha is very, very special to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Not only because when he became a single father after the death of Khadija radiallahu anha, she was the only one in the house with him. Until he married Sauda and Aisha radiallahu anha later on, he was a single father. It was only Fatima radiallahu anha in the house with him, looking after him. So, and this love actually continues into the Medinan phase, inshallah. We're going to get to that. So, she makes the hijrah at the age of 13. So she's about 13 years old when she makes the hijrah to Medina with Kulthum. That's the older sister, of course. Sauda bin Zam'a. Who is Sauda bin Zam'a? Do we know? Sauda bint Zam'a. You should know this. Can I use a mic? Yeah, exactly. Good. God bless you. So Sauda radiallahu anha was the first woman that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam married after Khadija radiallahu anha after a while. Okay? So we have Fatima radiallahu anha, Kulthum, Sauda bin Zam'a, Aisha radiallahu anha, Aisha's mother, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu's wife, Ruman. So this group together in Medina, when they migrate there, when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam arrives and the women are there, at this point, Ali radiallahu anhu is older, so he moves out. He's no longer living in the house with them in Medina. So he lives on his own. And he was paired off with a Sahabi by the name of Sahal ibn Hunayf. Sahal ibn Hunayf, okay? Who actually went on to become very, very close friends with Ali radiallahu anhu. He went on to become one of his generals in the army. And subhanAllah, when he was shaheed, when he was martyred, Ali radiallahu anhu performed his janazah prayer himself. So they became very, very close friends. So that's where Ali radiallahu anhu was when he was paired off. Okay? Now, Abu Thalaba radiallahu anhu mentions how the relationship of Fatima radiallahu anha and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in Medina. Okay? So he narrates that when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would go out on a journey, whenever he would leave the city of Medina, the last person that he would go and see would be Fatima radiallahu anha. Okay? So the practice was that he would go pray 2 rak'ah at the masjid, then he would go and see whoever else was there, and then the last person would be Fatima radiallahu anha, and then he would leave the city after that. Now, same thing, the reverse order. When he would return, when he would come back into the city, the first person going straight to the masjid, doing the 2 rak'ah, and then the first person that he would go and see before going home, before to anybody else, he would go and meet Fatima radiallahu anha first and foremost, again, taking his time with her at her home. This is, of course, after she had married Ali radiallahu anhu, living in their own home. And then he would go home to his spouses. Okay? So there's one narration here from Aisha radiallahu anha. And subhanAllah, by the way, as I was putting this narration together, I was going through these things. I noticed that how much of these narrations and how much of these things, the story we get from none other than Aisha radiallahu anha herself, and that how much of it we would have missed if Aisha radiallahu anha did not narrate any of this. So here's one of those narrations, yeah? So she goes on to narrate that when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would be sitting at home, or in a gathering even, okay? And Fatima radiallahu anha would walk in. He would get up, he would say salam, welcome her, he would rush to her, grab her head and kiss her on the forehead. Then he would grab her hand and bring her to exactly where he was sitting, in his own seat. Okay? And he would sit her there. And the exact same kind of love and practice was reciprocated by Fatima radiallahu anha also, with the exception of one extra step. So when Fatima radiallahu anha would be sitting down and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would walk in, so she would do the same thing. She would rush to him and grab his head, kiss his forehead, and then the extra step that she would do is she would kiss both his hands. Right after kissing his forehead, she would kiss both his hands, and then she would do the same thing. Take his hand and take him to where she was sitting in the seat. Okay? Now, I want to just highlight 2 points from this practice. Number one, this is a society that used to bury their daughters. And look at what we learn from our Uswat al-Hasana, from our ultimate role model. So Allah Azza wa Jal teaches us in the Quran that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is our ultimate role model. So even how we treat our children, we learn from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And look at how he's treating his daughters. They went from a practice of being ashamed and burying their baby daughters to honoring their daughters to that level of you getting up. And by the way, in Medina, he's the head of state, right? He's the prophet of God. He's the head of state from a government perspective, but he still gets up for his daughter, gives up his own seat for her. Okay? So next time somebody comes along with this nonsense of Islam and women and oppressing and stuff like that, just share this story. I think anybody who's sincere enough, this should be sufficient. That this is what we learn from our Prophet. Right? So that's one point I want to make. The second point also to highlight, us Muslims, subhanAllah, we are very, very quick to point and highlight to our Christian brothers and sisters that you, as a follower of Isa alayhi salam, you guys don't actually follow Isa alayhi salam. So for example, how he dressed, how he prayed, his diet, the things that he ate, the things that he didn't eat. We point out to them quite a bit that you guys do not actually follow Isa alayhi salam the way he lived his life. But at this, I want you guys to think and ask yourself this question. How many of us follow this practice of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? There's many things that we're supposed to learn from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Wudu, praying, all of that. But let's ask ourselves this practice. Like maybe not all of us are old enough to have an adult daughter that we would have the opportunity to get up and, exchange our seats for them. But I'm sure you've seen other elderly uncles, grandparents. Have you seen this in practice? So we should be very careful when we point this out, that, and at least let's take this opportunity and learn. Like if we're supposed to learn this from our Prophet, This is how we should be treating not only our children, this is also an opportunity for our children to learn how to treat their parents, right? So it's a very, very powerful learning opportunity and lesson for us. Okay? So now the hijrah has been made. Everybody's in Medina now, alhamdulillah, those who could migrate by now anyways. Let's now talk about how was it that Ali radiallahu anhu and Fatima radiallahu anhu, how their marriage came to be. Now, obviously they grew up in the same household, right? We spoke about how Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam took Ali radiallahu anhu at infancy from the house of his uncle Abbas radiallahu anhu, brought him in his own home, raised him until he finally moved out in Medina. And so the two of them grew up together, almost like cousins, okay? This is now shortly after Badr, okay? So right after the Battle of Badr, trying to figure out what everybody is. So Zainab radiallahu anha, the oldest daughter of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam at this point, is still in Mecca, okay? She's with her husband, Abu al-As radiallahu anhu, who accepted Islam later on. We have Ruqayya radiallahu anha, who just passed away. Remember when the Battle of Badr happened, Uthman radiallahu anhu, who was married to Ruqayya radiallahu anha at the time, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him to stay back and look after his wife. So that day of victory, the victory of Badr, was the day of victory and the day of sadness and loss, because as they came back from the victory of Badr, they walked into a city that was sad because the daughter of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had passed away. So from the victory of Badr, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam goes straight to the graveyard to bury his daughter. Okay, so subhanallah. And then shortly after that, we have Kulthum radiallahu anha, who then marries Uthman radiallahu anhu. So that's where the sisters are now. So one of the sisters passed away. The oldest, Zainab, is still in Mecca, and Kulthum is now married to Uthman radiallahu anhu. Okay. Now keep in mind, at this point, because Fatima radiallahu anha is now at the age of marriage. Okay. So imagine you're one of the Muslims, this Muslim community in the city of Medina. And as Aisha radiallahu anha describes her, she's like the female version of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And how much you love the family of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and how much you love Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So how many people do you think are looking to get married to Fatima radiallahu anha? Including Abu Bakr and Umar. Okay? Yeah, they came to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam with proposal, asking for the hand of his daughter Fatima radiallahu anha. But to them, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that not yet. She's perhaps young at the moment, and was just straight up refusal. Now, it is possible also that he may have indicated to them that I'm refusing you because I have somebody else in mind. We don't necessarily have that exact narration, but we know that they came and they were refused by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay? So, at this point now, Ali radiallahu anhu is about 23 years old, and Fatima radiallahu anha is about 16. Now, this following narration of how their marriage came to be, keep in mind, comes from none other than their son, Hassan radiallahu anhu. So imagine Hassan, maybe, I'm assuming, maybe Hassan radiallahu anhu was looking to get married, so he goes and asks his father, like, tell me how you guys came to marry with each other. And then, so this narration of basically Ali radiallahu anhu telling his son how your mom and I got married is coming from the narration of Hassan radiallahu anhu. Okay? SubhanAllah, so beautiful, right? So the story comes from Ali radiallahu anhu, the narration from his son. So he says, Ali radiallahu anhu who's narrating, he says, I thought about it, but then I was like, bro, he just refused Abu Bakr and Umar. Okay? You think he's going to give you his daughter? He's like, I shoved it out of my mind because I just convinced myself that was not going to happen. Okay? So he says, at our home, there was some servants. There was an elderly woman servant, And her name is not necessarily mentioned in the narration, unfortunately, but she was a Muslim, the servant. So she suggests to Ali radiallahu anhu to go and ask for Fatima radiallahu anha's hand. So the same thing, he says, I told her, like, he just refused Abu Bakr and Omar. You think he's going to give her to me? And but she kept on insisting. So finally, so he says, look, even if I did want to marry her, and I went and asked for her hand, I don't have anything to give for meher. I have nothing. I'm poor. Okay? So then she says, and this is where we kind of assume and deduct that maybe she was given a hint that push Ali to ask for the hand. Because she says to Ali radiallahu anhu that go and ask Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam for the hand of Fatima radiallahu anha. If he wants her to marry you, he will find a way for you. If he says no, khalas, he says no. But if he's okay with you marrying his daughter, he will find a way for you. Remember, because Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam raised him too, right? So he says, all right. So then he does shura, he does consultation with other senior members, Abu Bakr, Umar, Sa'ad bin Mu'adh. They all encourage him to go and ask. So he says, okay, all right, let's do this. So he says, I collected myself, built up all the courage that I could. I go to the house of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I say salam, and I go sit down, and it's like somebody put a lock on my tongue. Can't say a word. And I'm sitting here beside Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he's asking me, like, oh, son of my uncle, what brought you here? What's up? What do you need? And he's like, I'm trying to say words, but nothing is coming out. And whatever is coming out of my mouth is just gibberish. It's nonsensical words. Nothing is making sense. I'm just frozen. So finally, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says to me, maybe you're here to ask for Fatima's hand? And he says, I put my hand down, my head down, and a lot of shyness, and he says, Naam ya Rasulullah. Yes, that's what I'm here for. And then Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam asks him, so what do you have for meher? He says, I have nothing. It's like, I have nothing. So then Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, well, yeah, I saw you with a shield the other day. You have a shield, no? He said, I have a shield, but I don't think it's worth much. And that's why I didn't consider it anything of value. It's not worth much. Just tell you what, go and sell it in the market. Whatever money you get out of it, just bring that and we'll use that as meher. Remember, the servant had told her that he will find a way for you. So we can assume that maybe the people were given the hint. So subhanAllah, he grabs his shield, he leaves outside the house, and he's like, oh my God, I literally said like 10 words in this whole discussion. I said like 10 words. SubhanAllah. So he takes his shield and he goes out to the market to sell it. So here's another person that perhaps was also given a hint. Okay? Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu, who is now about to be his brother-in-law. Right? So he finds Ali radiallahu anhu. He's like, Ya Ali, what's up? Where are you going? I'm going to the market. I want to sell this shield. I'm going to make some money or meher because I'm about to marry Fatima radiallahu anha. So he says, I'll buy it off you. I'll buy the shield off you. He's like, okay, but it's not worth that much. Whatever you give, I'll give you 400 dirhams. By the way, the shield, Ali radiallahu anhu says that it was probably worth about 4 dirhams. He's narrated to tell others that it was probably worth around 4 dirhams. But Uthman radiallahu anhu is Uthman radiallahu anhu. So, and because he just found out what the money was for, he multiplied by 100. So I'm going to give you 400 dirhams. Give me the shield. And Ali is like, hey man, I could use as much money as I could. So he's like, here you go, take it. I take the 400. He's being generous. I take it. I mean, look, Uthman radiallahu anhu knows the value. Like, he's a businessman, right? It's not like he was tricked or anything. He's a businessman. He's managing a business empire. He's one of the richest Sahaba who has ever lived. So he knew the value of the shield. And then as soon as the transaction is over, Uthman radiallahu anhu says, Ya Ali, hey, congratulations, you're getting married. He's like, yeah. He's like, here's my wedding gift to you. And he gives him his shield back. So Ali radiallahu anhu now goes back to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam with the 400 dirhams and still with his shield. Okay. Now, this is going to get even more beautiful now. Because now you see a whole community coming together. For starters now, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is now coming to Fatima radiallahu anha to ask her for her consent for her marriage. So he asks her, Ali came and asked for your hand. From my side, I approve, but I need your consent. Do you accept? So out of haya and shyness, she doesn't say anything. And this is where we get our fiqh ruling that if she doesn't respond due to haya and shyness, and then also Muhammad follows up. The follow-up question is, so the first question is, do you accept? And then the follow-up question is, do you have any objections? Okay, and if to either of those two questions there is no answer, then it's considered as a yes. Okay, because again, look, it's not just some friend of hers. This is her father. This is like the Rasul of Allah asking her. So there's a lot of haya and shyness here at Fatima radiallahu anha, and that's why she doesn't actually say anything. So the yes is basically taken, and they proceed with the marriage. So Ali radiallahu anha says, I went home, I found some more scraps and stuff around the house that I could sell, and I managed another 80 dirhams. Okay. So I want you guys, first of all, one other lesson that we can take away from this. The meher of the Queen of Jannah was 400 dirhams. Today, the idea of meher is turned into like an insurance policy. $40,000, $20,000. So the meher, by the way, is a gift from the husband to a wife to symbolize unity and love of two people. Now, of course, Allah Azza wa Jal did not put a limit on it, okay? But we also shouldn't be treating it as an insurance policy, okay? It's just a gift to symbolize love and unity between two people. So now the preparations for the marriage begin. So one of the first things, as they're getting things prepared, making a list of things that's required to go out and buy, now the agreement has been done. So as a joke, Fatima radiallahu anha says to her father, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you're marrying me off to the guy with a big belly? So Ali radiallahu anhu had a big belly. Okay? Now, he wasn't obese or fat, but he did have a big belly. Okay? But he was very, very strong. So the Sahaba narrate that if you used both your hands to put it around his biceps, it would not reach. Like your hands would not touch each other if you put it around his biceps. So he was big. He was physically big. He had a belly, okay, but it wasn't like fat. So he was more really muscular. That's why, I mean, he's a lion. He's very strong and a good warrior. But she says it as a joke, right? And so Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, look, I think not a lot of people can do this. So Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam takes this opportunity of a joke and turns it back and defends Ali radiallahu anhu in a way that's so beautiful. So he says to Fatima radiallahu anha in response that he is one of my first companions, one of the first people to accept Islam. He's one of my first companions in Islam, and he has one of the most ilm and one of the most hilm, patience, forbearance. So he takes even like, I mean, Fatima has, she also, by the way, like she also did want to marry Ali radiallahu anhu. Like she also did want that marriage. But so that's why she's saying this as a joke, as opportunity. But Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam takes it and turns it into praise of Ali radiallahu anhu. Okay, now comes the community. So Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is now delegating different tasks to different Sahaba to get the preparation for the marriage done. Okay? So, he says to Ali and Bilal radiallahu anhu, you two guys go and buy perfume for the bride and furniture for the house, whatever you can find in terms of furniture. So, two of them head out. Then we have Salama radiallahu anha, to buy some stuff specifically for the bride. So jewelry, clothes, whatever, to find and buy for the bride herself. Then we have Salama, by the way, we know who she is, yes? Salama, you know who she is. Sahabi, of course, Sahabi, but she's also one of our al-Mu'mineen, right? Okay, wife of Muhammad sallallahu a bit later. Then we have Abu Bakr and Ammar ibn Yasir. Ammar ibn Yasir, we know who he is. Yes, Ammar ibn Yasir was the first family whose parents were the first shuhada in Islam killed by the hands of Abu Jahl, right? Ammar and Sumayya radiallahu anhu. Okay, so this is their son, Ammar radiallahu anhu. So these two now, Abu Bakr and Ammar, go to buy clothes for Ali and Fatima radiallahu anha for their wedding. Okay, so Muhammad sallallahu is delegating. Then we have Aisha and Salama preparing the home, decorating the house for the newlywed. Okay, because look, Ali radiallahu anhu used to live somewhere on his own, and Fatima radiallahu anha was with Muhammad sallallahu. Now they're moving into a house for the two of them. Okay, so now let's decorate the house for the newly bride. So the two of them go and start decorating the house. So what do? Salama and Aisha radiallahu anha, they go and take some mud from the back of the alley, they clean it up, and they turn it into these cushions. They cover it with cloth. They put wooden, like a big giant wooden log in the corner of the house with some hooks. And that was basically their closet. Okay? Today, subhanAllah, when we're looking at apartments and houses, or, it's like, is it just like a sliding door closet, or is it a walk-in closet? We're fighting with our siblings over coat hangers. These guys, okay, their closet was just a big giant log, the corner of the house with some hooks. Okay? SubhanAllah. So Muhammad sallallahu is not just delegating, he also participates. He actually probably takes on the hardest work for this marriage. He builds and puts together their bed. So what does he do? He grabs, he goes, finds a whole bunch of wood to put it aligned together. Okay? Then on top of it, he puts a whole bunch of leaves, the palm leaves, the thick leaves that you can fold and lay on top of each other. And then he covers it. He covers, after the wood is put together, the leaves are on top. He covers the whole bed with velvet cloth, covers it, and that's basically their bed. And in the same manner, he builds them himself pillows. He has sheets, and he fills them up with the same palm leaves, so it turns into cushions, and he builds the pillows for them. He leaves them animal skin and for the pillows. He leaves them in the house himself, a pot, a water skin, and a couple of grinding stone to grind grain with. That's basically what they would turn to flour and bake bread. So these are all the things that Muhammad sallallahu himself does by his own hands, building them their bed, their pillow, and then a few items that he leaves for them in their house. And Ali radiallahu anhu says that bed that Muhammad sallallahu made for us was basically everything for us. Because he says, at nighttime, that was our bed. We would sleep on it. During the daytime, that was our couch. We would sit on it. And also, that was the only spot that we had that we would feed our animals off of. So whenever they had like hay or any kind of vegetables to feed the sheep or the animal that they had, they would put it on top of that, and then they would come and eat off of that. So he says, that's what he says, that bed was literally everything that we had, we needed. SubhanAllah. Asma radiallahu anha narrates that the meal for the wedding was barley, dates, and what they call haste, which is date paste, so like jam. Okay? And that was it. Okay? This was the feast that we would call today of this wedding. And Asma radiallahu anha mentions that this was one of the happiest days of Medina. Not only because everybody was so happy because of this marriage, but because everybody saw how happy Muhammad was. His happiness increased everybody else's happiness. Because that's how much everybody in Medina loved him. You just look at Muhammad happy, and then you just become happy yourself. And it's the same, by the way, when he's sad. Because there's many times where he would be sad and cry, and everybody would just sit around him and cry without even knowing why. But this, she says, one of the happiest days in the history of Medina. So Muhammad then gathers bunch of the senior Sahaba. He does the nikah, and he says to the elder Sahaba there, bear witness, you guys bear witness that I am marrying my daughter Fatima to Ali ibn Abi Talib at the moment here, and the nikah is performed and finalized, accepted. Um, and then he tells Ali radiallahu anhu that after the wedding, after the walima, after the wedding, when you guys go home, wait for me. I'm going to come visit you guys that night. So Ali radiallahu anhu says, okay, no problem. So he says, I'm in the house now. I come into my new place. I come into this house. I see the decorations. I see our closet. I see the new bed. I see the pillows. And subhanAllah, he says, this is beautiful. This is like more than I've had anything before. So he says, I sit on the bed. And of course, none other than Ayman brings Fatima radiallahu anha into the house. And she sits her beside me. And now we're just waiting for Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so these two are both out of haya and shyness, are just sitting there like frozen statues, not moving, not saying anything, until finally Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam comes into the house. So he comes in and he says to them, don't move, stay where you are. And he goes to the pot that he had given them with water, and he makes wudu with that water, and then one by one he calls them to come up to him. So first he calls Ali radiallahu anhu. After he makes wudu with the water, he pours the water over Ali radiallahu anhu, makes dua for him, says go sit down. Then she calls Fatima radiallahu anha, and with the same water that he's made wudu of, he pours the water over Fatima radiallahu anha. And again, remember, all of this is still being told by Ali radiallahu anhu and narrated by Hassan radiallahu anhu, right? So what Ali radiallahu anhu says that at this point that, I was obviously very, almost like scared. So I'm not saying anything. I'm sitting there. He says, but I could see your mother, Fatima radiallahu anha, as she was shivering, like she was shaking, right? Because out of haya and shyness, because you're standing in front of your father at the night of your marriage, so subhanAllah. And so he pours water over her a little bit, and then Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam makes dua for her, and then he says to her that don't worry, you're okay. I've married you to one of the most beloved people that in my family that I know of. So you'll be taken care of. Don't worry. Be calm. And then subhanAllah, the beautiful dua that he makes for both of them is, Ya Allah, bless them in what is in between them and what is in upon them, and bless them in their offspring. Okay, so this is the dua that he makes for both of them, and then he leaves. Should we stop here? I know. The issue is if we continue, then we can't stop. I'll share maybe one more story, and then inshallah we'll pick up from next week, okay? So there's a few narrations of people coming to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and asking him, who do you love more? We have the very famous incident of Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anhu in public asking Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who do you love the most? Which he responds to saying, Aisha radiallahu anha. And then he says, no, from the men. And then he says, her dad. Who's next? Omar, Uthman. And then Amr ibn al-As is like, okay, I felt like my name might not even come up on the list, so I just stopped. Because he just assumed, because how Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would treat everybody, how he talked to people, you just assume you're the most beloved person to him. Just based on how he would talk to you and how he would treat you, you would just assume that you're the most important and the most beloved person to him. Because that's how he generally treated people. So with that assumption, Amr ibn al-As asked him, and then he's like, okay, I found out that, okay, maybe I'm way down the list. Now, another incident, Abbas and Ali radiallahu anhu, this is before marriage to Fatima radiallahu anha, the two of them come and sit in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they also ask him, who's your favorite family member? Okay, so now it's a little bit more narrowed down. Because remember, Amr ibn al-As says, who do you love the most in general? Very open-ended. These two come in the privacy of their home. It's more narrowed down. who do you love the most in your family? Okay? So immediately Muhammad says, Fatima. Okay? Because remember now, she's the only thing left now that he has from Khadija radiallahu anha. Okay? The Fatima. He says, okay, what about the boys, the men? And he says, you see that young man standing by the door? They look back, and it's Osama ibn Zayd. What was his mother's name? So Zayd's wife, the two slaves from the same market. Quiz time? Anybody responding in the chat maybe? Baraka, Ayman, yes, okay. So he says from the boys, from the men, that young man over there, the son of Zayd radiallahu anhu, Osama ibn Zayd. And then he says, and then who? And then he says, Ali radiallahu anhu. Okay? And then Abbas radiallahu anhu is like, what's going on here, man? Like, first your daughter, then your adopted son's son, and then your nephew. You left your uncle for the last. So he says, well, Ali made hijrah before you. Not only that, he accepted Islam way before Abbas radiallahu anhu and then the hijrah also, right? Now, we have Fatima radiallahu anha and Ali radiallahu anhu coming and sitting in front of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because here's the thing. Now Ali radiallahu anhu has experience being in these shoes, right? He saw what happened with Amr ibn al-As, and he saw what happened when he was there with Abbas radiallahu anhu. So he says to Fatima, like, if we're going to go and ask Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam who he loves more, we got to be precise. We cannot leave it open-ended. So we're going to go and ask him, between the two of us, who do you love more? Okay, so there's no ambiguity, so he's not going to start naming anybody else. Between the two of us. So the two of them now come and sit in front of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is after marriage, after a few kids, yeah? I'm jumping into the future a little bit. So he says, Ya Rasulullah, tell us, between the two of us, who do you love more? What do you do when you have, as a parent, right, when you got two of your kids coming and sitting? Because Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not going to lie, right? He's going to tell you straight up how it is. But also Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the one person that is never going to let anybody's feelings get hurt because of what he's about to say, what he's about to do, yeah? Very, very considerate. What do you say? Let's put yourself in the shoes of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like, what do you do? What do you say? Like, do you tell Ali you love him more? Do you tell Fatima you love her more? Because remember, look, like I know we've been talking about Fatima radiallahu anha and how strong relationship she has with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But also keep in mind Ali radiallahu anhu accepting Islam, but even at the age of 8 and 9, standing up like a grown-up and shaking Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's hand when everybody else stayed quiet and mocked him and they turned away from him, right? So both of them are extremely close. And both of them he raised from the age of infancy. Yeah? So what do you think? What do you think he said? No. But see, this is exactly why Ali radiallahu anhu didn't allow that to happen between the two of us. So we can't just go like, oh, your children, your kids are men. No, between the two of us. So Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says to Ali radiallahu anhu that she is more beloved to me than you, but you have more izzah and honor for me than her. Okay? See how he balanced it out? Yeah. She is more beloved to me than you, but you have more honor and izzah with me than her. Okay? So, inshallah, we'll end here. And then as of next class, inshallah, we're going to continue with the marriage and the children of Ali and Fatima radiallahu anha ajma'in. We're going to talk about their kids being born and further in. And then today we started off a little bit of a sad events as Fatima radiallahu anha was growing up, taking on the position of her mother. Very, very sad moments as she was growing up. So we started off with a bit of a sad story, and then we're ending off with a very, very high and happy, joyous moment, happiest day in Medina. And that's where we're going to start off next class, or next halaqah, inshallah. But it is going to start going down back towards sadness because we're going to be talking about their death and separation and Actually, some extremely powerful poetry by both Ali radiallahu anhu and Fatima radiallahu anha. But nonetheless, it is going to be a bit of a sad ending. I mean, we know this already, but khair inshallah, we'll leave that for next week. Question? Um, this question, the answer, there is definitely a correct answer, but it depends who you ask. I think you know what I mean. Like if you ask our Shia brothers and sisters, they're going to say, no, it's 100% only the children of Fatima and Ali radiallahu anha, nobody else, because they're the only Ahlul Bayt. However, from the more holistic and accurate and proper definition of Ahlul Bayt, it's not just including the other wives, but also his uncles and cousins. So the Battle of Karbala or the massacre of Karbala, yeah, there was, yeah. Inshallah, when we get to the biography of Hassan and Hussein radiallahu anhu, respectively, individually of their own, we're going to be talking about it in a lot of detail. But yes, to answer your question, there was male survivors. Well, actually, one baby child, male survivor in the massacre of Karbala, who went on to grow up, and who actually went on to become the teacher of many of the tabi'een and tabi'een afterwards. So we get a lot of Islamic knowledge from him as well. Inshallah, we'll talk about him also. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? So good, inshallah, for now, to end here on happy, joyous moment. Okay? So next halaqah, make sure we have some tissues. Well, that's it, guys. Jazakallah khair for attending and participating. Inshallah, until next week. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wal asr inna al-insana lafi khusr. الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا sabr.